My name is Ethan Hayes, and I'm what you'd call a garden variety trust fund kid. I say garden variety because, in most stories, guys like me are nothing more than stepping stones for the hero, or worse, the red shirt who gets killed. Often the first act, but it feels like there's a glitch in my script, because I, Ethan Hayes, have no intention of being cannon fodder. All I want is to quietly build my empire, marry the woman at the top of it, all the Ice Queen CEO. Of the Sullivan Corporation, Claire Sullivan. The problem? She already has a fiancé. The first time I heard the news was from Claire's mother. Helen, a woman who looks at me with more affection than she probably ever gave her own son. I was holding a glass of 82 Lafite and nearly performed a spit. Take worthy of a Gilded Age aristocrat. I'm sorry, what was that, Helen? For a moment I actually wondered if I'd watched too many corporate thrillers and started hallucinating. Claire has a fiancé. Don't get me started. The mere mention of him twisted Helen's impeccably maintained face into a mask of disgust. She lowered her voice as though she were revealing a state secret. He's a good-for-nothing freeloader. He spends all day doing laundry and cooking, living off Claire's money. He's an embarrassment to the Sullivan name. Alarm bells went off in my head. Wait a second. Why did this setup sound so familiar? Useless husband, despised by his mother-in-law, completely dependent on his powerful wife? In that moment, a lightning bolt of realization struck me. Undeniable thought clawed its way into my mind. Had I just stumbled into one of those trashy secret billionaire web novels cast as the villainous rich rival meant only to be humiliated? My life, Ethan Hayes' life, was not going to be that cliché. Helen's birthday party was held at the Sullivan family's private villa in Summit Estates. I pulled my Aston Martin DB11 up to the valet, handed over the keys, and carried with me a polished rosewood box. Tonight I wasn't just here to wish Helen a happy birthday. I was on a reconnaissance mission. I had to see for myself what kind of man this so-called legendary freeloader really was. The moment I stepped through the doors, the reception was a study in contrasts. Ethan, you're here. Come in, come in. Helen's face lit up like a Christmas tree as she grabbed my hand and pulled me inside with an enthusiasm that suggested I was the real son-in-law. In the living room, Claire's father, Robert Sullivan, gave me a nod of approval. Ethan, that green energy project you're spearheading on the South Waterfront is brilliant work. The kid's got a bright future. But amidst all that warmth, I felt a single ice-cold gaze. I followed it to the landing of the grand spiral staircase. There she was, Claire Sullivan, watching me. She wore a silver haute couture evening gown, her long hair cascading down her back, her makeup flawless. She radiated an aura as cool and distant as the moon. She gave me a slight nod, her eyes betraying nothing. I sighed inwardly. That's the woman I've set my sights on. It's always a challenge. And then saw him half hidden in the shadows behind. Her stood a man in a cheap, ill-fitting suit. His hair was a mess, his eyes darting nervously as he shoved his hands into his pockets. He exuded an air of inadequacy, so out of place in the opulent villa, it was almost painful to look at him. When his gaze met mine, it was filled with undisguised hostility and jealousy. No need to guess. This had to be the infamous Fiancé Kyle Miller. Helen ignored him completely, leading me straight to a seat at the main table, where she eagerly introduced me to the other guests. This is Director Williams' son from the city council. And that's Mr. Lee, the CEO of the tech firm next door. I navigated the pleasantries with ease, though my eyes kept flicking back to Kyle sulking in his corner. He was a complete outsider, invisible to everyone. Even Claire seemed a little embarrassed. She frowned, whispered something to him, and he reluctantly shuffled over to a small, isolated table. I couldn't help but smile. Life as a kept man clearly wasn't all it was cracked up to be. After a few drinks, it was time for presents. The guests lined up with the usual luxury bags, expensive liquors, and rare cigars. Helen accepted them with polite smiles, though her eyes betrayed a hint of boredom. Then it was my turn. I presented the rosewood box with both hands. Helen, I wish you a very happy birthday. Stumbled upon this little trinket and thought of you. She opened it with a smile, sighed, nestled in velvet, lay a jade-green emerald bracelet. The stones shimmered with a deep, vibrant glow, so clear they seemed to shine from within. Good Lord, those Colombian emeralds. An older man gasped from across the table. The clarity, the color, that has to be worth 7 figures. Easily, Helen's jaw dropped. She carefully slipped it onto her wrist, the emeralds flashing beneath the chandeliers. Her voice trembled. Ethan, you shouldn't have. This is far too much. I simply smiled. If you like it, Helen, it's worth every penny. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Claire's gaze lingering on the bracelet. For just a flicker of a moment, her cool, unreadable expression cracked. Surprise glimmered in her eyes. She glanced at me, and for a fleeting moment, the ice seemed to thaw. Just then, a discordant voice cut through the admiring murmurs. Mere trinkets, baubles bought with dirty money. Hardly comparable to the gift I prepared for my mother-in-law. All eyes turned toward Kyle, who had somehow materialized from his corner. He wore a smug, self-satisfied expression, as if he were the only enlightened person in a room of fools. He was holding a box too, but it wasn't polished or elegant. It was a battered cardboard thing that looked like it had been fished out of a recycling bin. Helen's face immediately soured. What junk could you possibly have, you freeloader? Don't embarrass us any further. Kyle paid no attention. He slowly opened the box to reveal an eagle. A crudely carved eagle made of a milky greenish-white stone, perched on a lump of unidentifiable rock. The room fell silent. Then came a stifled snort, followed by a wave of suppressed laughter. An eagle. Is he trying to wish her a patriotic birthday? I'm dying. You can find stuff like that in any souvenir shop on the interstate for $20. Helen trembled with rage, pointing a shaky finger at Kyle. You waste of space. Are you doing this just to humiliate me? Get out of my house now. Claire's face went ashen. She rushed to Kyle's side, hissing, Kyle, what in God's name are you doing? But Kyle seemed oblivious to the mockery. He straightened his back, surveying the crowd with an air of pity before his eyes landed on me. Fools. You're all fools. A smirk played on his lips, his voice low but carrying across the silent room. Do you have any idea what this is? This isn't just some carving. This is a lost work carved from the same block of Georgia marble as Daniel Chester. French's early prototypes for the Lincoln Memorial. It's called Freedom's Spirit. Its historical value is immeasurable. He paused, his condescending gaze intensifying. Ethan, was it? Your bracelet, while made of expensive rocks, is nothing but a worthless pebble compared to this national treasure. The room buzzed with disbelief. Even I was momentarily stunned. Was this guy serious? An older gentleman with gold-rimmed glasses, a renowned appraiser named Mr. Peterson, couldn't resist. He stepped forward, adjusting his glasses to examine the stone eagle. Kyle's smile widened, triumphant. He could already picture their shocked and awestruck faces. Inwardly, he sneered, Ethan Hayes, a pathetic little rich boy. Try to show. Off in front of me? I am the Crimson King, leader of the Shadow Syndicate, with wealth beyond nations. I acquired Freedom's Spirit from a down-in-his-luck European aristocrat. How could these common mortals possibly recognize its worth? Today, I will open their eyes. I will show Claire who the true alpha is. After a few moments, Mr. Peterson frowned and shook his head. He looked at Kyle as if he were a particularly dense student. Son, where did you buy this thing? Highway. Rest stop. Kyle's smile froze. Mr. Peterson? What do you mean? Look again. The craftsmanship, the patina. There's no need. Peterson cut him off, his tone final. This is a modern reproduction. The material is cheap soapstone, carved by machine. They've soaked it in coffee and motor oil to try and age. Forget national treasure, it's not even an antique. It's worth maybe $50. On a good day. Someone couldn't hold it in any longer. The dam broke, and the entire hall filled with roaring laughter. Roaring laughter. A $50 national treasure? That's the best one I've heard all year. Kyle's face turned a deep, blotchy red. He stared in disbelief at the soapstone eagle, then at the confident appraiser, his lips trembling, unable to form a word. He couldn't comprehend how the priceless artifact his trusted subordinate had spent a fortune to acquire overseas was suddenly a piece of roadside junk. Helen looked like she was about to have an aneurysm. "Get out!" she shrieked, pointing at him. "Get out of my sight right now. The Sullivan family does not have a son-in-law like you." The last bit of color drained from Claire's face. She stared at the man who had brought such utter humiliation upon them, her eyes filled with disappointment, anger, and a profound, soul-crushing weariness. And the man who called himself a king, standing amidst the gales of laughter, looked as pathetic as a stray dog. I saw his fists clench at his sides, his fingernails digging into his palms. His jaw so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. His eyes full of venom locked onto me. The corner of his mouth twitched, then pulled back into that now classic lopsided sneer. Ah, there it is. The crooked smile. Looks like I've officially made an enemy. After the birthday party fiasco, Kyle's status in the Sullivan household plummeted. He became practically invisible. Helen and Robert wouldn't even look at him. If it weren't for some old family promise made a generation ago, they would have kicked him to the curb long ago. I, on the other hand, became a regular at the Sullivan villa.
Helen
Invited me for dinner every other day, and Robert often called to pick my brain about market trends. Naturally, I saw Claire more often, while she still maintained a polite, professional distance. The wall of ice around her had started to melt. We would occasionally talk about work, about our visions for the future. I discovered she wasn't just a beautiful face. She was a brilliant businesswoman with incredible foresight. Found myself admiring her even more. And as our connection grew, someone's jealousy reached a boiling point. The look in Kyle's eyes grew more venomous by the day. Whenever I was at the house, he would lurk in the corners like a defeated rooster, glaring at me. His stare screamed, "Just you wait, I will have my revenge, or my name isn't the Crimson King." I treated him like he wasn't even there. What could a so-called king who couldn't even spot a $50 fake possibly do? It didn't take long for the next opportunity to present itself. The Sullivan Corporation was bidding on a major redevelopment project on the west side of the city. Their biggest competitor was the powerful Sterling Group. To win the contract, Claire had been pulling all-nighters for a week, and the exhaustion was starting to show. The day before the final bid, I used the excuse of bringing her some healthy soup to visit her at the office. In the CEO's suite, Claire was hunched over a mountain of paperwork, a deep frown etched on her face. "Still stressing about the West Side project?" I asked, placing the thermos on her desk. She looked up, rubbing her temples wearily. "Yeah, Sterling's bid is aggressive. I heard they've already had a back-channel meeting with the head of the development authority, General Marcus Thorne." Marcus Thorne. I'd heard of him. Legendary figure who'd had a decorated military career before moving into the private sector, known for his decisive, no-nonsense style, notoriously private. Getting a meeting with him was nearly impossible. "I've tried every connection I have to get a meeting with the general," Claire said, a note of helplessness in her voice. I was about to say that maybe I could help. The Hayes family had done business with Thorne's company in the past. When the office door swung open, Kyle strode in carrying a cup of coffee, a look of fake profundity on his face. "Claire, don't worry." He set the coffee down, shooting me a condescending glance. "Sterling Group is nothing. And as for Marcus Thorne, one phone call from me is all it takes." Claire scowled at him. "What nonsense are you spouting now?" Kyle smirked, full of confidence. He pulled out his phone and waved it in my face. "Ethan, you probably don't know this, but I have a friend who served with Marcus Thorne. This friend of mine is now one of the most powerful men in the country. They call him the Ghost of the North. All I have to do is make one call, and not just one Marcus Thorne, but 10 Marcus Thornes would have to give my friend some face." Ghost of the North. I almost choked. What was this? A Tom Clancy knockoff? Had this guy read so many spy novels, he actually thought he was the main character? Claire clearly didn't believe him either. Her face was a mask of annoyance. "Kyle, can you please stop? This is a professional environment." But Kyle's pride seemed wounded. He scoffed. "Claire, you underestimate me. Today I'll show you what real power looks like." With that, he dialed a number and, for my benefit, put the call on speaker. After a few rings, a deep, commanding voice answered, "Hello." Kyle cleared his throat and adopted the tone of a superior officer. "Ghost, it's me." There was a 2-second pause on the other end. Then, in a slightly confused tone, the voice asked, "Who?" The confident look on Kyle's face evaporated. Quickly added, "It's me, King. You don't remember? 3 years ago in the Arctic Circle, we fought side by side." "Oh, right, Kyle Miller. Didn't you go home to get married? What can I do for you?" This wasn't exactly the deference your majesty had been expecting. Kyle's face flushed, but he pressed on. "It's like this. My wife's company wants to work with Marcus Thorne's group. I need you to give him a call and tell him to award the West Side project to her." He said it so casually as if he were ordering a pizza. I saw Claire's eye twitch. She looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. The ghost went silent. Again. This time, the silence stretched long enough for beads of sweat to form on Kyle's forehead. "Kyle," the ghost finally said, his voice taking on a strange edge. "Do you have some kind of misunderstanding about our relationship?" "What? What misunderstanding?" "Back in the Arctic? You were the guy in the mess hall? The one who fed the sled dogs, right? I think I stopped by once and said we're doing a good job? Are we close?" I couldn't help it. I sprayed a mouthful of water across the desk. The dog feeder in a mess hall, and he thinks he's buddies with the ghost. Claire's face was a picture of shock. Then a mortified blush spread across her icy features. Kyle's face cycled through every color of the rainbow. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning, standing frozen with his phone in hand, his mouth hanging open wide enough to catch flies. And another thing, the ghost's voice turned hard. "General Marcus Thorne was my commanding officer. He is a man I respect more than anyone on this planet. Who the hell do you think you are, ordering him around? Kyle, I'm warning you. Don't ever call me again. Don't you dare use my name. You're an embarrassment." Click. The line went dead. The office was deathly silent. Cal was still holding the phone to his ear, frozen like a statue carved out of pure humiliation. I fought back a grin, walked over and patted him on the shoulder. "Hey man, there's no shame in it," I said earnestly. "Every job has its purpose. Feeding dogs is important work too." Kyle snapped back to reality, his eyes blazing. With murderous rage, Claire finally recovered from her shock. She drew in a deep breath, not even sparing him a glance, and turned to me. "Double quotes, Ethan. I'm so sorry you had to witness that." "Don't worry about it," I said gently, handing her a tissue. "Everyone has unique friends." She accepted it, dabbed her lips, then made a decision. Picking up her desk phone, her voice turned cool and resolute again. "Sarah, please inform the team that we are pulling our bid for the West Side project." Her words were steady, but the pain was clear. Depending on Kyle, would bankrupt the company. "Wait." Placed my hand on hers to stop her. Her skin was cold, trembling faintly under my touch. I looked her in the eyes. "Seriously, don't pull the bid? Leave Marcus Thorne to me? We're going to that meeting tomorrow as planned." Claire stared at me, confusion and doubt swirling in her eyes. I didn't explain further, just gave her a reassuring smile and walked out of the office. Behind me, I could hear Kyle grinding his teeth, muttering through clenched jaws. "Unforgivable. I will have my revenge." His lip began to twitch again, curling uncontrollably. Honestly, I thought he was about to. The next day, at the bidding presentation, Claire sat stiffly beside me, her expression tense. Across the room, the representatives from Sterling Group wore smug little smirks, as if they had already won. Kyle came too. He wore sunglasses indoors, hiding in a back corner, radiating a hostile, stay-away-from-me energy. Clearly, he'd shown up just to watch me fail. The bidding began. Sterling's proposal was impressive, highly competitive. When it was our turn, Claire did her best. But everyone in the room knew our chances were slim. The moderator was about to announce the winner when the main doors swung open. A man strode in with the posture of a commander and the calm authority of someone who belonged in every room he entered. Marcus Thorne. Ripple of whispers spread through the hall. Thorne ignored everyone, walked straight to the podium and took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice rang deep and steady, "regarding the West Side Project, I have made my decision." The lead from Sterling Group was already grinning ear to ear, but Thorne's gaze swept across the room and landed on me. He smiled slightly, gave the faintest nod, then announced, "I've decided to award this project to the Sullivan Corporation." Boom. The room erupted. Sterling was stunned. Claire sat speechless, her eyes darting between Thorne on stage and me at her side. I only offered her that same confident smile. In the corner, Kyle's sunglasses clattered to the floor. He stared at me, then at Thorne, his face twisted in horror and disbelief. How could a man even the so-called ghost of the North couldn't sway show me such favor? He couldn't understand, and he never would. Because yesterday, after leaving Claire's office, I'd made a simple call to my father, the chairman of Hayes Industries. "Dad, do you know a General Marcus Thorne over at Apex?" "Oh, Mark, of course." When he retired and started Apex, I gave him his first round of funding. Loyal man. Still sends me a Christmas card every year. That was that. In business, it's not about imaginary codes or secret societies. It's about real connections, real capital, real credibility. After the meeting, congratulations poured in. For the first time, Claire walked straight toward me, her face soft with gratitude. Her usually cool eyes sparkled. "Ethan, thank you." "It was nothing," I said, gazing at her beautiful face, catching the faint scent of her perfume. On impulse, I reached up and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. My fingertips brushed her soft skin. She tensed, then blushed, biting her lower lip and looking down. She didn't pull away, and from across the room Kyle saw it all. His pupils shrank to pinpoints. His jaw trembled. Jealousy and humiliation burned in his eyes like wildfire. You too." He pointed a shaking finger at us, his facial muscles twitching into that all-too-familiar, grotesque sneer. The victory sent Sullivan Corporation's stock soaring. It also brought me and Claire closer than ever. She started smiling at Muriel, genuine smiles, like watching a glacier melt. In the spring, each one made my heart skip a beat. As for Kyle, he was a ghost of his former self, lurking in the shadows. I heard he locked himself in his room for days. When he finally emerged, his eyes were dark, bitter, like the whole world owed him a debt. He stopped confronting me outright, choosing instead petty sabotage, sprinkling salt on the flowers I sent. Claire, mixing sand into the health supplements I bought for Helen. Childish but annoying. I ignored him. After all, wrestling with a man living in his own delusions wasn't worth my time. And soon, another opportunity for him to humiliate himself arrived. The city was hosting a high society charity gala. Both Claire and I were invited. She asked me to be her date. Kyle, of course, never even saw an invitation. That evening, I arrived in a tailored Ford suit. Claire descended the stairs in a black fishtail gown, diamonds glittering at her throat. She was breathtaking. When she saw me, she naturally took my arm. She tensed at first, but didn't let go. We'd never been this close, and then he appeared. Kyle, in a wrinkled bomber jacket, stood blocking my car. "Claire, you're going? With him?" His eyes burned at the sight of our linked arms. Claire's brow furrowed. Her voice turned cold. "Kyle, this has nothing to do with you." "How can it have nothing to do with me? I'm your fiancé. Fiancé who brings me nothing but shame." The words hit him like a slap. His face drained of color, sucked in a sharp breath, struggling to contain his rage. Then his gaze shifted to me. His sneer returned. "Ethan, you think wearing designer suits and driving fancy cars makes you worthy of Claire? You're just a vulgar businessman who reeks of money." "I, on the other hand, am different." "Oh," I tilted my head. "And how so?" "I appreciate art. I understand culture." Kyle lifted his chin, basking in his own self-declared superiority. "Tonight's main auction item is the final masterpiece of William Vance, Whispers of the Ocean. A true work of genius. Someone like you probably doesn't even know who William Vance is, do you, William Vance?" Of course I knew him. Used to play chess with my grandfather in our garden. But I didn't say that. Only shrugged. Can't say that I do. Kyle's smugness grew. I knew it. Let me educate you. Vance and I are dear friends. He even taught me personally. His calligraphy dragons in flight, spirit in every stroke. Today I'll show you what real art is. Claire will finally see. That spiritual wealth is nobler than vulgar luxury. With that, he unrolled a scroll across the hood of my car, pulled out ink and brush, and began painting right there in the driveway. Claire and I were stunned into silence. Kyle puffed up, his chest muttering under his breath, power in the wrist, spirit in the stroke. His brush scratched furiously across the paper. At last, he lifted the scroll proudly. For large words, my wife loves me. The characters were a chaotic, crooked mess. Ink splattered everywhere. It looked less like calligraphy and more like a Rorschach test gone wrong. Before I could even react, Claire's voice cut through the night. Kyle, have you lost your mind? Her words dripped with disappointment and disgust. I don't want to see you again. Please, just go. Kyle froze. His masterpiece, his proudest skill, dismissed as trash. He grew frantic. You don't understand. This is art. It's expressive. If you don't believe me, let's take it to the gala. Let them decide. My work is just as good as Vance's. Rolled up the scroll, storming off toward the venue. I watched him retreat, shook my head, and said to Claire, "Looks like we're in for a show tonight." She closed her eyes, weariness settling over her. When she opened them again, her voice was steady. "Ethan, let's go. As of today, I want nothing more to do with him." When we arrived at the gala, it didn't take long for chaos to break out. Kyle had somehow slipped inside. He now stood on stage, holding up his "My Wife Loves Me" scroll, lecturing the bewildered audience on his artistic philosophy. The crowd whispered in disbelief. Who is this clown? Is he comparing himself to William Vance? He's not worthy to clean Vance's brushes? The host, one of Vance's own protégés, was red-faced, ready to call security. "Stop," Kyle shouted, eyes blazing. "You commoners simply lack vision. If you dare bring out Vance's Whispers of the Ocean, I'll challenge him on the spot." The host laughed bitterly. "You challenge William Vance? You're not even worthy." And then, from the entrance, an old but resonant voice rang out. "Let him." The crowd turned to see an elderly man with a full head of white hair. He carried himself with a presence both distinguished and almost ethereal. Walking slowly, leaning on my arm, Mr. William Vance. The host gasped and rushed forward. And in an instant, the entire ballroom rose to their feet, paying respect to the titan of the art world. Kyle was stunned, never dreamed of seeing William Vance himself, but shock quickly turned into wild excitement. This was his chance. The perfect opportunity to prove himself. He would dazzle the master with his calligraphy and win over everyone. Inside, he screamed, "Do you see, Claire? This is my true power. A simpleton like Ethan could never understand this world. Once I show my brilliance, you'll finally know who your soulmate is." Vance, with my help, stepped onto the stage. His wise eyes flicked to Kyle's scroll, and for the briefest moment, a pained expression crossed his face. Then he turned to Kyle and spoke slowly. "Young man, are you certain you want to compare this with my Whispers of the Ocean?" "Of course." Kyle puffed out his chest, his confidence brimming. "Very well." Mr. Vance nodded, then looked at me. "Ethan, my boy, please I obeyed, carefully unfurling Whispers of the Ocean across a long table. At once, the entire space shifted. A majestic aura swept through the room. The brushstrokes seemed alive, at times crashing like furious waves against a cliff at others. Flowing like a gentle stream into the sea, the poetry and power in each character were so profound. It was as if you could hear the ocean's roar. Placed side by side, the comparison was devastating. Kyle's "My Wife Loves Me" looked like the scribbles of a child beside a masterpiece. His face drained of all color, lips trembling as he stared at the scroll in disbelief. His pride and joy, his greatest work, shattered in an instant. "No, it's not possible," he muttered. "My calligraphy was taught by you. How can it be?" Vance frowned. "When did I ever teach you?" 3 years ago on Blue Mountain. You said I had natural talent, that I was destined for calligraphy, mister. The old man thought for a moment, then realization dawned. I remember now. There was a young man grinding my ink for me. He stood there so long, I made a polite comment. That was you. Kyle went pale, speechless. Vance sighed, shaking his head. Young man, impatience is the enemy of art. The path of calligraphy requires a quiet heart. Go home, practice your fundamentals. With that, he turned his back on the trembling Kyle and faced me instead. His hand rested warmly on mine as he addressed the crowd. Everyone, I came tonight not only to join you, but to make an announcement. His voice rang out with quiet authority. This piece, Whispers of the Ocean, was meant to be my final work, never to be revealed publicly. But tonight I wish to gift it. To my dear young friend Ethan Hayes, gasps rippled through the room. Vance's original was beyond priceless, and this was his last work. Eyes turned to me, shocked, envious, disbelieving. Mr. Vance, this is far too valuable. I can't accept it, I protested quickly. Nonsense, my boy. The old man smiled. This piece was originally meant as a gift for your parents' anniversary. I simply never found the right time. It belongs with you. Had no choice but to bow my head and accept with gratitude. That single act obliterated what remained of Kyle's pride. He had thought himself a cultured artist, mingling with masters, but he was just the boy who ground the ink. He had thought I was a tasteless buffoon, yet I was the master's cherished friend. The humiliation was too much to bear. His gaze flicked. Between me and Claire, she hadn't looked at him once. Her eyes were fixed on me, filled with admiration, curiosity, and something softer, almost like affection. That was the final blow. Kyle snapped. With a guttural roar, he shoved through the crowd and fled the ballroom like a madman, his face twisted with rage and humiliation into something almost grotesque. After the gala, Claire made her stance brutally clear. She cut Kyle off, moving into a condo near her office, leaving no room for reconciliation. He spiraled, begging, threatening, even stalking, but Claire was done. Meanwhile, my relationship with her grew quietly, naturally. We shared dinners, movies, and moments that felt almost ordinary, but ours. Neither of us said the words, but we both knew where this was heading. One day, I took her to the racetrack on the city's outskirts. Even a CEO needed to feel adrenaline now and then. I put her in the passenger seat of my McLaren P1 and pushed it hard across the track. She was nervous at first, but soon her laughter filled the car, her face glowing with exhilaration. At the paddock, she, suited up in a professional racing outfit, sleek, form-fitting, fierce. She looked devastatingly beautiful. I was about to put her behind the wheel herself when the moment was ruined. A battered Ford Transit screeched to a halt in front of us. Kyle, he leaped out, finger pointed. Ethan, I challenge you to a race. It's glanced at him, then at his rusted van, and nearly laughed. A race. What for? Who can deliver more packages? You. My jab cut deep. He forced a breath, putting on his tough man act. Don't underestimate me. I've beaten the best street racers on the Angeles Crest Highway. When it comes to driving, I'm the pro here. Angeles Crest Highway? Was he living in a knockoff Fast and Furious movie? Before I could reply, Claire stepped in coldly. Kyle, are you a child? We're not interested in your ridiculous games. Claire, this isn't a game, he pleaded, desperate now. I'll prove to you this man is nothing but a wallet. He can't protect you. Me, I have power you can't even imagine. Watch, and you'll see. You'll witness my ultimate technique. The angel of death drift. I stared at him, wondering if his brain had been permanently warped by bad fiction. I wasn't going to indulge him, but one look at Claire's exasperated face told me everything. Some pests need to be swatted. Fine, I said flatly. 3 laps. First, across the line wins. What's at stake? Kyle's eyes gleamed with triumph. If I win, you'll never see Claire again. Deal. Deal. I nodded. And if you lose, you annul your engagement with her and disappear from our lives forever. he agreed instantly. In his mind, beating me was already a certainty. Claire tugged my sleeve, worried. "Ethan, don't. This is dangerous." I squeezed her hand lightly. "Don't worry. I could beat him in his own van." The race began. My McLaren P1 lined up against his Ford Transit. The contrast was laughable. The pistol fired, and my car shot forward like an arrow, the G-force pinning Claire back in her seat. Behind us, Kyle's van sputtered, coughing smoke before lumbering onto the track. By the end of the first lap, he was nowhere in sight. But in his seat, Kyle raged. "Damn it. His machine is too fast in a straight line. But the corners, that's where I'll strike." We approached the track's infamous hairpin. I slowed smoothly, hugging the line, executing a flawless turn. Behind me, Kyle's eyes gleamed. Now witness the angel of death drift. With a mad grin, he yanked the wheel and pulled the handbrake. In his imagination, the Transit slid gracefully around the curve, overtaking me in a blaze of glory. In reality, the van flipped. Crunch. Bang. Screeched. Claire and I watched, stunned, as the Ford rolled again and again before skidding to a stop, upside down, wheels spinning, smoke pouring from the engine. The track fell silent. I eased my car to the finish line and stopped. Paramedics rushed to the wreck, dragging Kyle out. His face was blackened with soot, his leg bent unnaturally. So much for the angel of death drift. It came closer to actual death as they carried him past on a stretcher. He glared at me with wild hatred. I didn't lose. It was a fluke. This van is garbage." I ignored him and turned to Claire. "You all right? Not too scared?" She shook her head, her gaze hard as ice as she watched Kyle being loaded into the ambulance. There was no pity in her eyes, only finality. Then she turned to me, and in the last way I expected, she rose on her toes and pressed her lips softly to my cheek. Warm, gentle. My entire body froze, my mind blank. Her face flushed crimson. She couldn't meet my eyes, her head bowed as she whispered, "Ethan, thank you for showing me everything so clearly." My heart swelled, threatening to burst. Tentatively, I pulled her into my arms. She was soft, smelling faintly of jasmine. Stiff at first, she slowly relaxed, resting her head against my shoulder. The setting sun stretched our shadows long across the pavement, and Kyle, broken, humiliated, saw everything as he was lifted into the ambulance. He watched the woman of his dreams kiss another man, then melt into his embrace. Gack, a mouthful of blood sprayed from his lips in a perfect arc. His eyes rolled back, and under the crushing weight of despair, he collapsed. Yet even as unconsciousness claimed him, his mouth, out of sheer instinct, twisted one last time in defiance. After the racetrack debacle, Kyle spent a month in the hospital with a broken leg. That month was the best of my life, with the constant buzzing of a fly finally silenced. Claire and I were inseparable. Her parents were thrilled, practically pushing us toward the altar. Everything was falling perfectly into place, but when Kyle was discharged, he appeared at the Sullivan Villa, on crutches, his leg in a cast. I happened to be there with Claire, about to formally discuss our engagement with her parents. His arrival shattered the warm, happy atmosphere. He stood in the middle of the living room, his face a thundercloud. He watched me sitting comfortably. With Claire, watched Helen peeling an apple for me with affection. Watched Robert clap my shoulder in approval. There was no place left for him in this home. "Claire," he began, his voice raspy and cold, "you've really chosen this man, who has nothing but money, and abandoned me, Claire stood and walked toward him, her expression unreadable. "Kyle, we should have ended this long ago. As for the engagement arranged by our grandfathers, I'll speak to the family elders and have it dissolved." "Dissolved?" Kyle laughed, hollow and crazed. "You're so naive. Do you really think you can get rid of me that easily?" He hurled his crutches to the floor. Even with one leg in a cast, he stood straighter than ever before. A powerful aura burst from him, shattering the illusion he had worn until now. Charade is over. His eyes swept over us, cold and contemptuous, as if we were insects. "I, Kyle Miller, am not the failure you see before you. I am the leader of the world's most powerful underground organization, the Shadow Syndicate. My code name is the Crimson King. My wealth is immeasurable, my power absolute. The only reason I endured this humiliation, playing the fool in this house, was because I loved you, Claire. His gaze burned into her, desperate and wild. I only wanted to experience a normal life, a normal love.
What?
But you pushed me again and again, especially you, Ethan. His fingers stabbed toward me, hatred blazing in his eyes. You've humiliated me. You've stolen my woman. And now, you've enraged me. The air froze. Helen and Robert were speechless. Claire stood motionless, staring at this stranger as though she'd never seen him before. Only I remained calm, lounging on the couch, munching on the apple Helen had peeled. Double quotes. "Oh, so you're a king," I said casually, my words muffled. "My apologies, Your Majesty." "What's your next move?" Kyle's lips curled into that cruel, crooked smile. "My move. I'll make you all pay." He pulled out a strange satellite phone and dialed. "Surround the Summit Estates. In 3 minutes, the Sullivan family will be wiped from existence, and Ethan Hayes will kneel before me, begging for mercy." He hung up, crossed his arms, and sneered at us, relishing the fear he expected to see. In his mind, he could already picture it. 10 warlords and 300 shadow guards descending like demons, shaking the city itself. The Sullivans begging for their lives. Ethan wetting himself in terror. Claire, broken with regret, weeping as she begged him to take her back. The thought twisted his smile into something grotesque. Claire's face had indeed gone pale. Didn't believe in his so-called syndicate, but his manic energy was terrifying. Instinctively, she moved closer to me. I patted her hand, reassuring her, then calmly pulled out my phone. Kyle scoffed. "Calling backup? It's too late. No one in this city can save you. My power is beyond imagination." "Is that so?" smiled, tapping 3 digits. "Hello, 911, I said pleasantly. "I'd like to report a crime." Kyle froze, staring at me as though I were insane. "You're calling the cops against me? The Crimson King?" To him it was absurd. What were the police against his elite syndicate? "Yes," I continued smoothly. "The Summit Estates Villa. There's a man here, impersonating the leader of a foreign criminal organization. He's making terroristic threats and summoning armed individuals to commit mass murder. They may be heavily armed. Please send help immediately. The more the better." Hung up and smiled at him. He blinked at me, stunned for a full 10 seconds, then burst into booming, hysterical laughter. "The police? Ethan, are you out of your mind? You think a few cops can handle my elite soldiers?" His laughter was drowned out by the sudden scream of sirens. Not one, but dozens surrounding us. From every direction, red and blue lights flashed outside, bathing the night sky. The pounding thrum of helicopter blades shook the air as searchlights lit up the villa. "This is the police." A voice thundered from a bullhorn, rattling the windows. "You are surrounded. Lay down your weapons and come out with your hands up." Kyle's sneer froze on his face, grotesque and broken. "What? What's happening? How did they come so fast? And with this much force?" He didn't know the city was in the midst of a zero-tolerance crackdown on organized crime. His theatrics had triggered the worst possible response. The front door exploded inward. Armed SWAT officers stormed inside, rifles raised, shields up. A dozen muzzles instantly trained on the only man standing, Kyle Miller. Rize's hands in. The air, Kyle's aura, evaporated. He stared at the rifles aimed at him, his so-called kingly presence crushed to dust. Just then, his satellite phone buzzed. Ash, his most trusted warlord. "My king, it's a disaster." The moment we entered the city, we were surrounded by police and the National Guard. Tanks, armored cars. "They think we're terrorists." "King, what are we?" The line cut off with gunfire and screams. Kyle's hand trembled violently. None of this made sense. He was supposed to be unstoppable. How had it all collapsed so quickly? A SWAT captain stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "You're the one threatening to kill a family?" Kyle tried to puff out his chest. "I am the Kree Cuff. Him, 2 officers moved in, snapping cold steel around his wrists. "Wait, it's a misunderstanding. A joke. We were role-playing." He thrashed, shouting excuses, but it was too late. He and his syndicate were dragged away in disgrace. Soldiers captured before they even had a chance to posture. Later, I learned the charge is terrorism, conspiracy, criminal threats. The Crimson King was destined for a long, very ordinary life in a federal prison. The living room fell silent once more. Helen and Robert stared at the wrecked door, dumbfounded. Claire walked over to me, her eyes sparkling with a strange light. Suddenly, she burst into laughter. "Ethan," she said, laughing so hard tears welled in her eyes, "I never realized you were so wicked." I shrugged, feigning innocence. "Just a law-abiding citizen." She laughed even harder, then threw her arms around me, holding on tighter than ever. Kyle Miller's downfall soon became a legend in our circles, a cautionary tale retold with amusement. With the blessing of the elders, Claire's engagement was formally annulled, and I, Ethan Hayes, finally won the hand of the woman I loved. Our wedding was spectacular. Claire, radiant in her gown, shone brighter than any star. Together we built a blissful life. She remained the Ice Queen's CEO to the world, but to me, her heart was warm. I grew the Hayes family enterprise to new heights. Sometimes late at night, Claire would ask, "Do you think Kyle regrets it?" "In there, maybe," I'd say. "He's probably still wondering why his story had such a terrible ending." Then I'd kiss her forehead and whisper, "Because real life isn't a web novel. The world doesn't bend to your sneer. Sometimes, all it takes is one phone call to end everything." She'd smile. "Which call?" 911. We'd laugh softly together, holding each other close. Outside the moon would shine, the world quiet and at peace. This was my story. This was my happiness.